Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. So we are July the 21st, 2025, and we're going to get into the next segment of Money Matters. I am your host, Hong Lu. I am with Cash Property Inc., and I'm happy to share this upcoming session with you because there's been a lot of comments and questions around, Hong, what is an LPGP? What does that actually mean? And how much money am I actually getting? So we're going to deep dive as much as we can in the next 30 minutes about LP shares. I'm going to focus specifically on LPs because most of the individuals that I talk to are coming in as an LP, a limited partner with some cash, and it would be really good to be all on the same page, 100% transparency about what that actually means and what the numbers actually mean in terms of like for your family. Okay, so before we get into the LPGP stuff, I do have, let's see here. Oh, these wonderful handmade drawings from a local artist in BC. Okay, so I've got a bunch of her cards and she's given them to me to give out to whoever. So what I'm doing is if you want one of these cards, just DM me and I will mail these out to you. These are playful, fun cards. They're postcards. And I'm sitting in a place that's really sunny, so it's really hard to see some of this. But these are beautiful hand-drawn cards by a local artist. I had these critiqued by another artist in Vancouver, and they're like, Hong, these are playful, these are fun, these are really fantastic cards. So if you want one of these, please feel free to DM me or put it in the comment box, and we will get you a few of these cards. Okay, so that is the first one. These ones are drawn by Van B-E-E. Okay, Van being for Vancouver. All right, so let's jump. Oh, and thank you to everybody who attended our monthly mastermind. We held that last Friday, and it was a huge hit. We had so much comments and feedback and discussion around some real estate deals in Alberta, and we also talked about how to leverage in a very non-traditional way on how to leverage our RRSPs. And so if you missed it, you snooze, you lose. Okay, but thank you so very much for everybody who attended. We will be hosting our next monthly mastermind on the third Friday of August. So just message us and we'll get you on that mailing list on the calendar. Okay, so let's jump right into the GPLP. And so, like I mentioned, we're specifically going to talk about the LP role and what that means in terms of money. Okay, so I've got a spreadsheet built out here because we're constantly presenting opportunities with LPs. And so let's just run through an example here of what this means. And if you were to come into a project with, let's say, 100,000 or 200,000, what does that mean for you as the money investor? Okay, so let me make this a little bit bigger so that everybody can see the numbers. Okay, so let's just say we have a project here and the LP is going to get 60% of the project. Okay, so the project itself is going to have 100%. So the LP is going to take 60. The GP, which is the general partner, the people who are more active, usually me and my partners, we would be the GP. So all of the money individuals coming in, the LPs are limited partners. And in this case, we're saying, hey, Mr. Money Person, you're going to get 60% of the project. Okay, now this is an important thing to understand here is that a percentage of the project does not mean a percentage of the LP. Okay, so what we're saying here is that the financial partners are going to come in and they're going to have they're going to bring in $1.5 million in total. So the project's worth way more than that, but the LP portion is going to be 1.5. And the reason why I'm saying that the project is worth more than that is because usually we take the 1.5 and that includes money for the down payment, renovations, due diligence, all that stuff. And then we go and we finance it through a mortgage or a loan or something else. Okay, so usually the GP percentage would represent the amount of money that we need for the down payment portion. Okay, so in this example, we're going to get the 1.5. We're going to go and leverage that and get a mortgage or a loan or something like that. So I have done that calculation down here. Okay, so what we're saying is that the project value is probably going to be close to around 2.5, meaning that we're going to leverage and probably get $1 million in a mortgage or something like that, or a loan. Okay, so, and the way to calculate that is my B6 divided by my B3. Okay, so basically I've just taken the 1.5 and I divided it by the 60% in this case. Okay, so the percentages could change depending on the project. The value may be higher, so it's different depending on the project, but in this case, just for ease of explanation, that's what this means roughly. Okay, so the project value is going to be a little bit more than what the amount of funds that we're raising for. Okay, so now let's just say we have 4 money partners coming in. So each one's going to be a limited partner, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in terms of the percentage of the LP, okay, they have, let me see here, total of 60%. Okay, so now you might say, okay, well, Hong, we're putting in 1.5 million, so we get 100% of that $1.5 million project. That's not the case here. Okay, so each LP is going to get a percentage up to that 60%. Okay, that's the way to look at it. So this percentage of the project, this is incorrect. This is not the percentage of the project. It's 60% of the project. So this is a percentage of the LP pool. Okay, so if you think, okay, so well, 60% represents 100, then that's what this means. Okay, so they would get 10% of the LP pool. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to understand. It's not the project, it's the LP pool. Okay, so if an LP came in with 150,000, that would be 6% of that 60. Okay, which represents 10% of that 60% if that was the 100%, if that makes sense. Okay, so in total, there'd be 1.5 raised. They would get, these 4 LPs would share in 100% of the 60%. Okay, and so then they would get a split of that 60% accordingly. Okay, so the way to calculate that is you take your 150, divide it by your D13, which is the 1.5. Okay, and then you times it by your 60%. So that's the math that goes in there, because the total amount raised is 1.5. Okay, and then the 10% is a number that I just put in there just to say, okay, hey, you know what, if somebody was to put in 10% of the LP amount of the money that we need, how much is that worth in LP shares? Okay, so that is the math behind that. And the total here for the 1.5 is just the sum of all the money, because we figured out, okay, that we're going to need 1.5. If we don't raise the 1.5, then we're not going to be able to close on the project. We may need to take private money. The GPs may need to put in some money. Okay, so this is, okay, so limited partner number 1 has 10% of the LP percentage, which is equivalent to 6% of the LP. Okay, so that's the way to read that. Okay, so now what does that mean? Like if somebody comes in and they put in, like the LPs put in 1.5 million, what does that mean in profit to everybody? Okay, at the end of the day, that's what really makes sense. Okay, that's really what's important here, because if you can understand this, and I want to say this to everybody that's watching, if you're taking the time out of your day to learn this from me and you're following me on YouTube or Facebook or whatever channels, thank you for doing that, because the more you can understand about how money works, the smarter you are about financial literacy, the better you'll be able to make decisions for your family and grow your money pool and be able to live the life that you want. The happier that you are as a family entity, the better the world is. Okay, so thank you for learning this stuff with me. Okay, so let's jump right into this now. If the any time frame yet, like we're just saying at the end of the project, there's 2 million coming in. Well, what does that mean for the LPs coming in? Okay, so all the LPs would get their 1.5 million back. Okay, hands down, that's as the GP, that's my biggest, like one of my biggest role is to make sure everybody gets their money back. Okay, so the LPs would get their 1.5 million. So that means there's $500,000 left to be split amongst everybody. And that will be split according to the 60/40, depending on what the structure is. So in this case, 60% of that 500,000 goes to the LP. So the calculation on that is you just take your 500,000 times your 60%, which gives you 300,000. That's how much is going to be given to the LPs. Now, that doesn't mean that each LP is going to get 300,000. They will get a proportion based on how much money they put in, based on their percentage. That's how much they'll get of that 300,000. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so let's go into that calculation here. So now we have 300,000 that we have to split. Okay, so then they get the LP1 who put in 150,000, okay, they're going to get 6%. Okay, so that translates to 30,000. This 30,000 is going to come out of the 300,000. Okay, so the math behind that is you just take your 500,000 times your 6%. Okay, so they will get 30,000. Now, if you're saying, well, Hong, why are we not taking the 300,000? Okay, is because if you use 300,000 as the math, then you're only going to get 60% of that 300,000, but they actually get 60% of the 500,000. Okay, so that's the math behind that. So if you can follow me along there, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so we're doing 60% to the LP. So in total, they get 300,000. Okay, so if I was to base it on the 300,000, then this amount here would be less. This 100,000 would be less. So then you'd know that it's wrong. Okay, so and then each of the individual LPs would get their percentage share times the 500,000. And that is how much they would get. So for LP 2, who put in 750,000, who has 30%, like almost 50% of exactly 50% of the LP, they get 50% of that 300,000, which totally makes sense. Okay, so that is the math behind how to calculate out. Okay, if somebody puts in whatever amount of money, they get X amount of LP. Well, based on the profit at the end of the day, how much does that mean? Okay, so now the important thing to also keep in mind, though, is that in this case, we haven't broken it down by years, like the duration yet. So in this case, if we just assume that the project took 1 year to do, okay, so where would this be relevant? So like in a flip or in a development project where we know for sure, like if we can do it within a year, which usually doesn't happen in a development project, but if we can structure it in a way where it is done in a year, then yes. Okay, so here we're saying for the 1 year time frame, if this project took place in 1 year, the return is 33%. So this is really good. Okay, and the calculation based on that is your 2 million less the initial investment, which is the 1.5. So we're just saying as a project, everybody in the project, we're going to see a 33% return. Okay, so we haven't broken it down by LPs yet. We've just said, okay, at a very high level project view, what's the return on the project? So in this case, we're saying 2 million less your 1.5. Okay, so 500,000 is our profit divided by the amount of investment. So that is a normal, very traditional way of calculating ROI. Okay, your profit divided by the money that you put in. Okay, so now we're saying this is for a 1 year time frame. Okay, so that's the math behind that. So 33%. So that's really good. Okay, so now if the project takes 2 years to do, well, how does that affect the numbers? Okay, so now we're calculating it per LPs. Okay, so here we're saying this LP is going to make $30,000, and we're saying here 30,000, okay, divided by D9, which is the amount of money that they put in. So they invested 150 and they got 30,000 at the end of the time frame. Okay, so their profit after 1 year is 20%. And this is assuming that the project finishes in 1 year. So the project made a 33.3% return, but the LP themselves made a 20% return because based on their profit, like based on how much money they put in. Okay. So now if the project takes 2 years to do, then you need to divide this number by 2. Okay, and the same thing for the 33. If the project takes 2 years, you need to divide that by 2 years, and then that's your annualized return. Okay, now I like to do the ROI math based on just dividing it by 2 or dividing it by whatever number, by the number of years, just as a simple math rather than worrying about IRR. IRR takes time value of money into consideration, and sometimes that's that can get a bit cumbersome to calculate out. And so I prefer just to focus on ROI directly without the compounding interest. Okay, so that means that each of the investors made 20%. Okay, and as you can see, it doesn't matter how much money you put in. This is the return per investor regardless. Okay, so now the other interesting thing to keep in mind when you're doing LPGP calculations is figuring out how much does each share cost. So in this case, we're saying, you know, the project value is 2.5. And this is just based on the 1.5 divided by the 60% for the LPs. Okay, that's usually a simple way of calculating the project value. Okay, so based on this, this means that 1% of the project is worth $25,000. Okay, and the way to calculate that is I'm basically saying B6 divided by 3. Okay, so my 1.5 divided by my 60% times divided by 100. Okay, so that gives me a dollar value there. So that means each share that we're raising, or each each dollar, each share is worth $25. Okay, so for every $1,000 that the LP puts in, they get 6.7% of the LP shares, or they get 4% of the total project. Okay, so 4% of the total project. So this is an important number to keep in mind, but it's not the only thing to keep in mind. The 4%, sometimes the comment that I get from people is, Huong, 4% is not very good. Like, I can go to another project and maybe get a higher percentage. So yes, depending on the project, you may put in 100,000 and you may get, say, a 6% of the project or 10% of the project. Okay. What's more important is your ROI. Okay. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you put in or how much percentage you get of the total project. What's important is how much money do you get back at the end of the day? How much money has your money grown? That's what's more important. Okay. And then alongside this is how much risk are you taking in? Meaning, how strong is your LP? Okay. How long is the project duration? All of that is way more important than what percentage of the project you're actually getting. Okay. If you tell me, hey, you know what, Huong, you put in 100, but you only have 2% of the project, but at the end of the day, you're making 30% on your money, that's a way better deal. Okay, hands down. Okay, so that is what you want to look at. Okay, so let me see here. So, okay, so here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Okay, the ROI is not the same thing as IRR. Okay, so in this episode, we're not really deep diving into what IRR is, except that IRR is an annualized return based on time value of money. So, which is more relevant if you're doing a project for several years. Okay, the GPLP split is a profit sharing And it's a very common structure within real estate to do. So a lot of the projects that I'm working on, we're doing GP LPs because it just makes more sense. It protects the LPs. It gets a lot of the money investors into a project. It allows us to share in the returns, allows us to split the risk, share in the risk. Okay, so what else can I tell you? Okay, that's a lot of stuff to tell you. Okay, so let me just double check on my notes on this other side to make sure that there is nothing that I have forgotten to tell you guys. Oh, yes, this GPLP structure, okay, which is the LPs are passive. And so it's a great way for individuals who have a 9 to 5, who are busy with their life, who've got young kids. This GPLP structure is a great way for people to get into real estate who may not know everything about real estate, who may not have spent enough years yet learning about real estate. Because, hey, I'm the GP, that's my job. Okay, so the LP role is passive. It's a great way for you to get into real estate, to start investing, to make money in real estate without knowing every single detail that you need to know about real estate. Okay, and at the same time, it also gives you the ability to shadow the GP, to learn from the GP, to 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 grow your education while being active and making money in the project. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. If you like these episodes, please give me a thumbs up, give me some comments in the comment box. If you want one of these cards, please, from Van B. Okay, these are beautiful, joyful, funny cards that are available. We are sending them to individuals free of charge. Okay, so if you want these, please send me a DM. And if you like these videos, please give me some likes and encouragement. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.